You are welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Salami Titilokwadeni, and the topic before us today will be looking at the application of differentiation. And under the application of differentiation, we have to look at two things. We have what we term as the rate of change, and also we have what we term as the turning point. And when we are talking of the turning point is the same thing as what we term as the maximum and the minimum. So now let's break it down. When we are talking of rate of change, what is the meaning of rate of change? Rate of change simply means the differential of shapes. And when we are talking of shapes, we'll be differentiating a circle, we'll be differentiating a sphere, and also we'll be differentiating an hemisphere. So when we are talking of the differential of a circle, we can differentiate a circle in two ways, with its area and with its circumference. And what is the area of a circle? The area of a circle is is pi r squared. And what is the circumference of the circle? That will give us 2 pi r. And what is the meaning of sphere? We should know that the volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. And when we are talking of an hemisphere, the volume of an hemisphere is 2/3 pi r cubed. So these are the 4 things we need under the rate of change. But when we are talking of rate of change, we all know dy dx. But one thing we must know here is we have something we term as the left hand side over the right hand side, which gave us the y ds in the previous video. But under rate of change, we don't make use of d. We make use of change in the left hand side over the change in in the right hand side. So let's just break it down. For this, what are we going to have? We have it as change in A over change in R. For this, we have it as change in C over change in R, change in V over change in R, change in V over change in R. But one thing we need to know under rate of change is, anytime they are asking us a question, their question is divided into 3. Now, they can ask us to find the change in area. So that means they will give us a question, they will give us the increments in the radius. They will not ask us to find the change or the increase in the area. So when they are asking us to find the increase in the area, that means we are looking for delta A. And also they can ask us to find the increase in the radius. That means they are going to give us the change in A. They are going to ask us to find the change in R. So that means we are looking for delta R. And also they can ask us to find the change in A over the change in R. And when they are asking us to find the change in A over change in R, what will they ask us? They will ask us to find the change in the area with respect to the radius. This man is changing the radius, this man is changing the area, and this man is the change in the area with respect to the change in the radius. And when we are talking of changing delta A over delta R, it means differentiation. And that is the summary for rate of change. So let us solve few questions on that before we move on to the turning point. Now, there is a year they asked this question. They said, what is the rate of change of the volume of an hemisphere with respect to the radius when your R is equal to 2? We are talking of the volume of an hemisphere. They now say, what is the rate of the change of the volume of an hemisphere with respect to the radius? So that means, what is the volume of an hemisphere? The volume of an hemisphere is is 2/3 pi r cubed. And when you differentiate this, what do we have? Change in V over change in R. Differentiate it, that will give us 2 pi r squared. But they said, what is the rate of the change of the volume with respect? That means we are looking for change in V over change in R. When your R is is 2. So substitute your R to be 2 here. What do we have? 2 squared is 4. 4 times 2 will give us 8 pi. So that means the answer is is 8 pi. It's simple. And there is a question here. They say, what is the rate of change of the circumference of a circle with respect to the radius when your radius is 2? That means they say, what is the rate of change of the circumference of a circle with respect to the radius? That means we are looking for change in C over change in R. And we need to know that what is the formula for the circumference of a circle? That will give us 2 pi R. And if you differentiate delta C over delta R, will give us 2 pi. and they are giving us r here. This r is useless just because our answer is not having r. So that means our answer is 2 pi. Do we get that? So it's simple. So that is when they are asking you to find the change in volume with respect to the radius, and when they are asking you to find the change in the circumference with respect to the radius. Now let's look at the question here. They said the radius of a circle is increasing at the rate of 0.02. So that means they said the radius of a circle is increasing at the rate of what? 0.02. They said find the rate at which the area is increasing. We are looking for change in area when the radius is 7. Do we get that? Now these are the parameters, and what are we having? We are having the area of a circle, and what is the formula? A is equal to what? Pi r squared. And if you differentiate this, we have it as what? Change in A over change in R to give us what? 2 pi r. But here, they are now asking us to find the change in A with respect to the radius. They said we should find what? Change in area. And what is your change in area? That will give us what? 2 pi r times what? Delta r. And then you insert all the values or all the variables. What is your r? They gave us our r as what? As 7 times what is your change in r? That will give us what? 0.02. And also we can change our pi to what? 22 over 7. This we cancel this, and that will give us what? 44 times what? 0.02. And that will give us what? 0.88. Do we get that? It's simple. So that is that about that. But now let's look at this question again. They said the radius of a circular disc. That means we are talking of a circular disc. And what is a circular disc? We are talking of a circle. They said the radius of a circular disc is increasing at the rate of what? 0.5. That means the change in r is what? Is 0.5. They said at what rate is the area of the disc increasing when the radius is 6? That means we are looking for the rate at which the area is increasing when your radius is 6. Do we get that? The radius of a circular disc is increasing at the rate of 0.5. At what rate is the area increasing when the radius is 6? So what are we having? A circle. And that will give us A is equal to what? Pi r squared. So if you differentiate this, what do we have? Delta A over delta r to give us what? 2 pi r. And then we are looking for delta A. So make your delta A the subject of the formula. That will give us 2 times pi times what is your radius? 6 times change in r. And what is your change in r? 0.5. And that will give us 2 times 0.5 is 1. 1 times 6 will give us what? 6 pi. So that means the area is increasing at the rate of what? Of 6 pi. Do we get that? So it's simple. And that will bring us to the end of what? Of rate of change. Don't forget, when we are talking of rate of change, it simply means what? The differential of shapes, and also it simply means what? The change in the left hand side over what? The change in the right hand side. And we said under rate of change, they can ask us 3 types. They can ask us to find the change in A, the change in A radius, and the change in area over what? The change in radius. And without wasting time, let us look at the next man, and that is talking of what? Of the turning point. And now when we are talking of turning point, we say what is the meaning of turning point? Turning point simply means the maximum and what? And the minimum. And under turning point, the maximum and the minimum also can be divided into 2. We have what we term as point, and we have what we term as value. Please note that when we are talking of point, point is the nature of x. And when we are talking of value, value is what? Is the nature of y. And there are some questions they will ask us to leave our answer in terms of point, value. That means the answer will be the nature of x, what? The nature of y. Do we get that? But now, what are the steps for us to evaluate a turning point? So the steps for a turning point is this. Number 1, we have to differentiate. That means you have to get the value of what? Your dy dx. And after differentiating, you equate down your dy dx to 0. And after equating your dy dx to 0, we will have an answer for what? For A. And if you are having an answer for A, this answer is either the maximum point or what? Or the minimum point. Do we get that? Just because we are having only one answer. And if they are asking us to get a value, you will now insert this, your x, inside the function of what? Of y to get your value. And that's a summary for turning points when you are having only one answer. So let us solve questions on past questions that involves only one maximum or minimum point. Now let's look at this. They say find the value of x. Find the value of x for which the function is what? Is minimum. So they say find the value of x for which the function is minimum. That means we are looking for the minimum value of what? Of x. So what is the step? You differentiate the f of x over what? Over dx. This will give us what? 6x minus 1. And after that, the next step is asking us to equate this man to 0. If you equate it to 0, what do we have? We have it as what? 6x is equals to 1. That means our x is equals to what? 1 over 6. And since we are having only one answer for x, this is the minimum value of x we are looking for. Do we get that? It's simple. The next question now, they are asking us to get the minimum value. And we have said it, the minimum value is the nature of y. They say find the minimum value of y is equals to x squared minus 2x minus 3. So we are looking for the minimum value, and that is the nature of y. So follow this step. What is the first step? You differentiate. That will give us dy dx is equals to what? 2x minus 2. After differentiating, you equate your dy dx to 0, and that will give us 2x minus 2 is equals to 0. From here, your x is 1. But 1 will be in the option. Don't pick 1, it's wrong. 1 means what? The minimum point. But since they are asking us to get the minimum value, you will now put your x as 1 inside the function of y. Do we get that? So what is 1 squared? 1 squared will give us 1. Minus 2 times 1 will give us minus 2 minus 3. And this will give us what? Minus 4. So that means the minimum value of y for that function is what? Is minus 4. So do we get that? It's simple. And let's solve this question again. They say find the maximum value. Now is maximum value, and maximum value is the nature of y. So that means we are looking for what? Y maximum of the function. They said f of x is equals to x minus x squared. It's still the same thing. So that means how will you solve? You equate this, you differentiate. That means if you differentiate, the f of x over dx will give us what? 1 minus 2x. After that, you equate this man to 0. Equate it to 0, what do we have? 2x is equals to 1. That means your x is equals to half. Mind you, half will be in the option, don't pick it. But when we are talking of maximum value, it is the nature of what? Of y. And what is the value of y? Put your x inside the function. That means your x is 1 over 2 minus what is 1 over 2 squared? That will give us what? 1 over 4. And this, the LCM is 4. We have it as well, 2 minus 1. That means the maximum value of y is what? Is 1 over 4. Do we get that? It's simple. Now let's solve more questions involving only one answer. Now they said at what value of x does the function minus 3 minus 2x plus x squared attain a maximum value? At what value of x does this function attain a maximum value? That means we are looking for what? The maximum value of what? Of x. And what is the step? It's simple. You differentiate. The y dx will give us what? Minus 2 plus what? 2x. You equate this man to 0. That will give us 2x is equals to 2. And your x is 1. 1 will be in the option. And they said at what value of x? That means the maximum value of x is what? Is 1. But whereas, if they are asking us to get the maximum value itself, that is the maximum value of y, it will be in nature of what? Of y. Now let's look at this question again. They said determine the maximum value of y is equals to x into 1 plus x. They said we should determine the maximum value of that. So that means if we are looking for the maximum value, it is a function of y. And that means we have to differentiate. So if for us to differentiate, you expand. That will give us x plus what? X squared. So differentiate is, what do we have? Dy dx is equals to what? 1 plus 2x. And after that, for maximum value, the second step is asking us to equate that man to 0. So equate it to 0, we have it as what? 2x is equals to minus 1, and your s is what? Minus 1 over 2. Minus 1 over 2 will be in the option, but it's wrong because they say find the maximum value, and the maximum value is a function of y. That means we are going to insert our x inside this question. And if you insert, we have it as what? Minus 1 over 2 into what? 1 minus 1 over 2. And what is 1 minus 1 over 2? That will give us half. And what is minus half times half? That will give us what? Minus 1 over 4. Do we get that? It's simple. And that is about a maximum value. But there are some maximum value that we are going to have two answers. Like some turning point, don't forget, that one we are only having one answer for x, one answer for y. That means it cannot be the maximum and the minimum. It is either the maximum or the minimum. But there are some questions that will lead us into a quadratic that we are going to have two answers for x. So if you have two answers for x, the two answers for x cannot be the maximum and the minimum. It is either what? The maximum or what? The minimum. So for this, let us look at this. For the turning point, let's look at this. The first step is for us to differentiate. The second step is for you to equate it to 0. And then you have two answers for x. For the previous one, we have only one answer. But for this, we are having two answers. So if we have two answers, that means the 2 cannot be the maximum. And the 2 cannot be the minimum. It is what? The maximum and the minimum. So for this, we need to check, or we need to test which one is really the maximum or which one is really the minimum. So if we are having two answers, there is now something we will do that we term as what? As checking. And what is the principle of checking? That will now lead us to the third step. And the third step is for us to find our d squared y over dx squared. This man means what? Higher derivative. And what is the meaning of d squared y over dx squared? You differentiate your dy dx again. And for this, for you to check, you will now insert a value of x inside this function. So if you insert a value of x inside this function, there is now a condition that says if your d squared y over dx squared is greater than 0, that means this point is what? Is a minimum point. And if your d squared y over dx squared is lesser than 0, that means this point is what? Is a maximum point. It's simple. Let me explain again. You differentiate, you equate it to 0. After equating it to 0, you have two answers. When you have two answers, these two answers cannot be the maximum. It cannot be the minimum. So that means you need to check. And for checking, you have to find your d squared y over dx squared. And now, after finding your d squared y over dx squared, just insert a value of x. And if you insert a value of x inside your d squared y over dx squared, if your d squared y over dx squared is greater than 0, that means the point you are inserting is a minimum point. And if your d squared y over dx squared is what? Is lesser than 0, that means the point you are inserting is what? Is a maximum point. Now, don't worry, you will understand it now. Let's solve few questions. They said determine the maximum value of y is equals to 3x squared minus x cubed. So for this, they said find the maximum value. We have known that when we are talking of maximum value is the nature of what? Of y. But without getting the value of x that will give us the maximum, we cannot get the maximum value. So that means we need the x maximum. So let us stop. That means what is the step? You find your d squared y over dx, dy over what? Over dx. So differentiate this will give us what? 6x minus what? 3x squared. And from this again, you equate this man to 0. And it will now lead us to what? A quadratic equation. And from this, we have 6x minus 3x squared is equals to 0. Looking at this, what is common? We have 3x into what? Into 2. minus what? Minus x is equals to 0. And from this, we have x is equals to 0 and your x is equals to what? 2. And you can see 0 and 2 will be in the option. If you pick any of them, you miss it because they are saying find the maximum value. And for the maximum value, we need to check since we are having two answers. And how can you check? You come back here to your dy dx to differentiate it again, and that will give us d squared y over dx squared. So if you differentiate this, we have it as what? 6 minus 6x. And now having it as 6 minus 6x, let us try to insert our x as 0. And you can see here that if you insert your x as 0, your d squared y over the x squared will give us 6. And since your d squared y over the x squared is giving us 6, what is the meaning? That means your d squared y over the x squared is greater than 0. And since your d squared y over the x squared is greater than 0, that means this point is what? Is a minimum point. Do you get that? And since your x is equals to 0 is a minimum point, that means the maximum point is what? Is x is equals to 2. So we have our x max as what? As 2. But the answer is not 2 because they say find the maximum value. And maximum value is the nature of what? Of y. So in this function, insert your x as 2. What is 2 squared? 4. 4 times 3 will give us 12. Minus what is 2 cubed? That will give us 8. And what is 12 minus 8? That will give us 4. Do we get that? It's simple. Because when you are solving for Jamb, you need to be careful. Because 0, 2, and 4 will be in the option. Do we get that? Let me re-explain. You differentiate. After differentiating, equate it to 0. Your x is equals to 0, 2. And this cannot be the answer just because it is a mixture of maximum and minimum. So you need to check, differentiate again. We have it as this. Just insert a value of x inside. And when we insert a value of x, our d squared y over the x squared is giving us 6. Which means our d squared y over the x squared is greater than 0. And there is a condition that if it is greater than 0, the point you are inserting is what? Is a minimum. So since x is equals to 0 is a minimum, that means x is equals to 2 is what? Is the maximum. And for you to get the maximum value, you insert that x inside the function of y. Now let's solve more questions. Don't worry, you will understand it better. So it's simple. It's simple. It's simple. It's simple. Thou shalt not cry. Now let's look at this again. They say find the value of x at the maximum point of the curve y is equals to x cubed plus x squared minus x plus 1. Now they say find the maximum value of x. That means we are looking for the x max. So what is the step? Let's proceed. You differentiate. Dy dx will give us what? 3x squared plus what? 2x minus 1. You equate this man to 0. And what do we have? 3x squared plus 2x minus 1 is equals to 0. And we are not having what? A quadratic equation. And if you factorize, we have it as what? 3x squared plus 3x minus 1x minus 1 is equals to 0. What is common here? 3x is common, x plus 1. What is common here? Minus 1. X plus 1 is equals to 0. And what do we have? 3x minus 1. And we have it as what? X plus 1 is equals to 0. Equate it to 0. What is your x? 1 over 3. And then we have it as minus 1. Both will be in the option. But we need to check. And for us to check, go back to differentiate your dy dx. And that will give us what? D squared y over what? The x squared. So if you differentiate this, what do we have? We have it as what? 6x plus 2. Do we get that? And now, just insert the value of x inside. If I were you, I will insert the value of what? X minus 1. So if you insert the value of x minus 1 here, that means your d squared y over dx squared will give us what? Minus 6 plus 2. And this will give us what? Minus 4. And what is the condition? If your d squared y over dx squared is lesser than 0, that means the point we are inserting is what? Is the maximum point. Automatically, what is your maximum value of x? Your maximum value of x is what? Is minus. Do we get that? Now let's solve more questions again. There is a year they asked another question relating to this. They asked a question, they said, find the value of x for which this function has a maximum value. The value of x for which this function has what? A maximum value. That means we are also looking for what? X max. It's simple. Find the value of x for which this function have a maximum value. So we are looking for what? The value of x. So that will give us, you proceed. That means you differentiate. If you differentiate, we have it as what? The f of x over the x. And that will give us what? 6x squared minus 2x minus 4. And also you equate it to 0. Equating it to 0, 2 can divide. Divide 2 by 2, what do we have? 3x squared minus x minus 2 is equals to 0. Do we get it? It's simple. And if you are having this, that means you factorize. And that will give us what? Minus 3x plus 2x minus 2 is equals to 0. What is common here? 3x is common. And we have x minus 1 left. What is common here? Plus 2 is common. We have x minus 1 left. And what do we have? 3x plus 2 into what? Into x minus 1 is equals to 0. Can you see the way we are solving it? It's simple. Since you just know the steps. And if you equate it to 0, your x is what? Minus 2 over 3 and your x is 1. So that means we are having two answers for x. If you have two answers for x, what do? You need to check. And for us to check, that means we have to differentiate our df of x over the x again. And if you differentiate that, that will give us what? D squared what? F of x over the x squared. Differentiate this again, it will give us what? 12x minus 2. And then let us just test a value. Test for x is equals to 1. If you insert it here, your d squared f of x over the x squared will give us what? Will give us 10. And what is the meaning of 10? That means your d squared y over what? The x squared is greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, that means your x is equals to 1 is what? Is a minimum point. But now, mind you, they are asking us to get the value of x. And what is the maximum value of x? That will give us what? Minus 2 over 3. Because when you are solving for Jamb, these three answers will be in the option. So you need to be careful to pick the right answer. And basically for this video, we are going to look at the last question. And the last question is this. Now they said the distance x is given as t cubed minus t squared minus t plus 5. They said we should find the maximum distance traveled. Sorry, they said we should find the minimum distance traveled. They said the distance x is given as this. That means distance is a function of what? Of time. They now said we should find the minimum distance traveled. That means we are looking for what? The minimum value of what? Of x. And let's proceed. We know the step. And for the step 1 is what? For you to differentiate. That will give you 3t squared minus 2t minus 1. Then you equate your dx over dt to 0. That will give us 3t squared minus 2t minus 1 is equals to 0. Then we are having what? We have to factorize. So if you factorize this, we have minus 3t plus 2t, plus t minus 1 is equals to 0. 3t is common, we have t minus 1, and then plus 1 is common, we have t minus 1 is equals to 0. Then we have 3t plus 1, and then we have what? T minus 1 is equals to 0. And from this, what are we going to have? We have t is equals to what? Minus 1 over 3 and 1. The two cannot be the minimum time. That means we need to cross-check which one is the minimum. And for you to cross-check, you will come to your dx over dt to differentiate again. And if you differentiate this will give us what? 6t minus 2. We get. And then test for 1. That means put your t as 1. If you put your t as 1 here, what is the meaning? That means we have it as what? 6 minus 2. And what is 6 minus 2? We have it as 4. That means when your d squared x over dt squared is greater than 0, That means this point you are inserting is what? Is a minimum point. And the minimum time is what? Is 1. But what is the question saying? The question asks us to find the minimum distance. Mind you, 1 will be in the option. That 1 is not the minimum distance, but that 1 is what? Is a minimum time. And since we are having the minimum time, that means we can now have our minimum distance. And how can you now have your minimum distance? Put your t as what? As 1. So if you put your t as 1, what is 1 cubed, 1 squared, and 1? That will give us 1, 1. And that will give us 1 minus 1 minus 1 plus what? Plus 5. This will cancel. And what is minus 1 plus 5? That means our minimum distance is what? Is 4. And that should be the last question, but there is a year they ask another type of question again. And let's make that to be our last question. Now for this, they say we are having the function 3x cubed is equals to 9x squared. They say we should find the value of x for which the function is what? Is maximum. They are just twisting it again. You can see we are not having a function of y, but we can make it to have a function of y. So that means here your y will just give us, bring it back, that will give us 3x cubed minus 9x squared. And then you proceed your journey. And what is the journey? The first step is for you to differentiate. Your dy dx will give us what? 9x squared minus what? 18x. After that, you equate your dy dx to 0. And we have it as what? 9x squared minus 18x is equals to 0. And from this, 9x is common. And that will give us x minus 2 is equals to 0. That means your x is 0 and your x is 2. But we are looking for the maximum value of x. These two answers will be in the option. But we are not God that we will just do bubble gum and know the maximum value of x. No, that means we need to check. And for checking, we have to differentiate our dy dx again. And if you differentiate that, that will give us what? D squared y over dx squared to give us what? 18x minus 18. Do we get that? And now, test for x is equals to 0. So if you are testing for x is equals to 0, that means your d squared y over dx squared will give us 0 minus 18. Will give us minus 18. And since your d squared y over dx squared is lesser than 0, that means your x is equals to 0 is what? Is the maximum constant. And that is what we are looking for. And that is the end of the video. Under the applications of differentiation, we say we have two. We say we have the rate of change and we have what? The maximum and the minimum, which is what? A turning point. And when we are talking of rate of change, what is the meaning? Rate of change simply means what? The differential of shapes. And what are the shapes? A circle, the sphere, and what? An hemisphere. And when we are talking of the turning point, what is the meaning of turning point? We have the maximum and the minimum. It can be points, it can be value, it can be points, comma what? Values. Do we get that? And we all know the procedure. You differentiate, you equate it to 0, you get the value of x. If you have one answer, you are safe. But if you have two answers, that means we are not safe. And if we are not safe, we want to make ourselves to be safe. How will you do it? You differentiate your dy dx again. That means you differentiate your dy dx again to have what? D squared y over what? Dx squared. You insert a value of x inside. And if your d squared y over dx squared is greater than 0, the point you are inserting is what? Is a minimum point. And if your d squared y over dx squared is what? Is lesser than 0, that means the point we are inserting is what? Is the maximum point. And my name is Salami Titilopadini. I love you all. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for always viewing our channel. And please don't forget to subscribe.